Now then, in that little serenity prayer, Niebuhr is saying there's some things you can't change. Learn to accept them. There's other things you can change. Challenge those things and have the power within you to fight against them. The last line says, and we need that wisdom to know the difference. And when you're looking at the world saying, what are the things I can't change and what are the things I can't change, think of Reinhold Niebuhr, because when it comes down to the question of what can I change, Niebuhr set the bar really, really high. I don't think there was ever a time in his life when he sat back and said, that thing is wrong, I can't change it. For example, he looked at the conditions within which the Ford employees lived and worked, and he said, those people are being dehumanized. They are being made less than human beings by their treatment. So he looked at that and he said, there is an opponent I will take on. So can you imagine somebody saying, a new minister in a church in Detroit saying, I'm going to take on Ford Motor Company. He stood up in the pulpit and he smashed his fist on the pulpit and he said, the way you people are treated by Ford is wrong. He challenged Ford Motor Company, who owned Detroit. And slowly, bit by bit, against that immense foe, Reinhold Niebuhr created change, whereby the conditions of the workers on the assembly line were improved vastly. Can you imagine the courage it would take to take on Ford at its very peak? Next, he looked around and he saw a church full of Ku Klux Klan members. And I have to tell you something, it's easy for me to stand up and condemn the Klan because we know today that it is evil and corrupt and vile. But in the day of Reinhold Niebuhr, the Klan was composed of evangelical Christians. It was at the very core of the Christian church. The notion of white supremacy made sense to Christians. And in that place where there were 70,000 Klan members, Reinhold Niebuhr stood in his pulpit and he said, the Klan is wrong. The Klan is evil. The Klan must be white. How could you do that? That's what the Apostle Paul is talking about when he uses the term enkrateia. You have power within. And you will not allow any circumstances around you to dissuade or frighten you. And bit by bit, Reinhold Niebuhr changed the attitude of the people in Detroit and throughout the United States with respect to the Klan, whereby they came to see the equality and value of all of humankind. Now I'm going to tell you something. You may think it took an awful lot of gall, an awful lot of enkrateia for Reinhold Niebuhr to stand up against Ford Motor Corporation and then against the Ku Klux Klan, but I'm going to tell you something. At this point, he hasn't even started. Taking on Ford and the Klan were just a warm-up for him. Reinhold Niebuhr's parents were both born in Germany. In 1935, Reinhold Niebuhr returned to Germany to experience his homeland. And when he was there, he was appalled. He was broken-hearted. He was shocked to see that the Jewish people within Germany, even in 1935, were being ghettoized and alienated and oppressed. And he knew that once you separated off a certain group of people in your society, once that happened, then the alienation and the oppression would not stop until something terrible had happened. And so having taken on Ford and the Ku Klux Klan, Reinhold Niebuhr then decided that he would take on the National Party of Germany, briefly known as the Nazis. and he began to preach against the Nazis and the mentality of Nazism. And he went back to the United States and he said, if we don't do something to prevent Hitler from his plan of action, then something terrible is going to happen very, very soon. And he openly preached out against it. And once again, it was a terribly dangerous thing to do, not only because of the power of the Nazis, but because, and this is the hardest thing in the world for me to say, the evangelical conservative Christians in Germany said nothing about what Hitler was doing. They gave their consent when Hitler rounded up gays and lesbians, for example. And they said, well, after all, I don't think God likes those people, so let's not say anything. And when Hitler began to round up the Jews, the vast majority of evangelical Christians said nothing. Because after all, if you interpret Scripture literally, well, the Jews killed Jesus, let Hitler round them up. And Reinhold Niebuhr stood up and he said, this form of Christianity is nothing. It is evil. It is vile. You must stand and resist this. Preached out at great personal risk to himself and to his family and to everyone around him. What kind of gall does it take for a man to stand up against the Nazi Party and Adolf Hitler? And this is such an incredible story. Reinhold Niebuhr became extremely influential in the life of another theologian named Dietrich Bonhoeffer. And Bonhoeffer was a member of the German intelligence under Adolf Hitler. And Bonhoeffer was so moved. He did several things. The first thing he did was to become a founding member of a church, the Confessing Church of Germany, which would eventually become 2,000 Christian ministers who all spoke out against Hitler. The second thing that Dietrich Bonhoeffer did with a very small cell of his friends was to develop a plot to kill Adolf Hitler. Incredible story. I know there's a movie in the theaters this summer with the beautiful Brad Pitt and those inglorious people, and that's just fantasy. And it's not as incredibly powerful or moving as what happened between Reinhold Niebuhr and Dietrich Bonhoeffer when Bonhoeffer tried to kill Hitler and he was captured and he was put to death. But what is in there is this idea of human beings saying we have the power within us to change what is wrong. It is the power that God has given us. And so, the next time you read the Serenity Prayer, in that line that says, give me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, you remember there were not very many things that Reinhold Niebuhr did not think that he could change because the power of God was in him. And then when he said, give me the courage to change the things I can change, I'll tell you, he had some ambition and he had some sense of what a human being with God's power in them could change.